This story started in the most dangerous place in the world, the Broken World Tree, situated at the center of the world. There, our protagonist named Rimuru casually strolled into a mysterious store. The merchant greeted him warmly. However, Rimuru quickly dismissed the formalities and told the merchant that he wasn't there for ordinary goods, but had come to purchase the real stuff lay hidden at the back of the store. Noticing how desperate Rimuru appeared, the merchant guided him to the rear and revealed his prized possessions, a group of girl slaves. Among them, one particular girl with a horn and a dragon-skinned hand captured Rimuru's attention. So, before making a purchase, Rimuru inquired whether her dragon hand was genuine, to which the merchant assured him that her hand was indeed real and could slice through anything, even the toughest metal. With the transaction concluded, the merchant yanked the girl forward like she was a dog by the chains around her neck, and informed Rimuru that he had rewritten the contract on her collar, officially making her his slave. With that settled, Rimuru asked the young slave for her name, but the girl plainly stated that she didn't know, prompting the merchant to interject and explain to Rimuru that the girl had lost her memories before being sold to him. Rimuru then decided to name the girl Ire after the water goddess, and they departed the store immediately. Later, while heading to the inn that night, Rimuru, speaking in codes, told Ire that everyone needed a goal to survive, and then revealed that his own goal was to reach the grand city of Raum. A few minutes later, they arrived at the inn, and once they entered the room, Ire immediately took her bath. Afterwards, she presented herself spotless to her master, but when Rimuru saw her, he shielded his uncultured eyes upon noticing her peaches were exposed. Misinterpreting Rimuru's reaction as disgust, Ire apologized and explained it was her first time being piped by a boy. However, Rimuru quickly clarified that he hadn't bought her to be his permanent whole, but rather to serve as his bodyguard. Furthermore, Rimuru disclosed that he possessed a gift allowing him to see other people's abilities, and then revealed to Ire that he had identified 3 gifts within her. In this world, gifts were essentially magical talents bestowed upon humans by the gods. So, when Rimuru elaborated that he saw in Ire the gifts of dimensional storage, acrobatics, and mana bestowal, Ire interrupted, admitting that she only knew of her dimensional storage since she couldn't recall anything from her life before enslavement. Additionally, Ire sadly confessed that she had once been a normal human before becoming the monster she was now. Rimuru then asked if she had anything stashed in her dimensional storage, to which Ire answered that she couldn't remember storing anything, but could sense the last item placed there. Pulling out a pile of junk, Ire described them as old items brimming with mana, but upon seeing them, Rimuru was surprised that Ire didn't recognize just how valuable the items were. Setting the topic of dimensional storage aside, Rimuru explained that he had no fighting skills and then revealed that Ire's job would be to fight in his place as his bodyguard. Before retiring for the night, Rimuru also told Ire they'd head to the marketplace before dawn, and when she pressed for a reason, he simply said it was to avoid being seen. Very early the next morning, as they set out for the market, Ire shockingly admitted to Rimuru that she couldn't fight, but Rimuru reassured her that her acrobatics gift meant she only needed to learn some kung fu lessons. Curious, Ire asked why a small dude like Rimuru even needed a bodyguard like some drug lord, to which Rimuru replied that he was heading to the perilous city of Raum, a 2-week journey from their current location. Rimuru further revealed that he aimed to enroll in the Magic Academy there and had initially planned to hire an adventurer for protection, but it would have cost more than a Tesla, so he opted to buy a slave instead, which was far cheaper. Moreover, Rimuru revealed that he possessed the gift of healing, so they were well covered. Suddenly, just then, 3 ugly thugs ambushed them, demanding all their cash. Immediately, one of the hoodlums noticed Ire was a slave girl and insisted they have some deep fun with her. At that moment, Rimuru whispered to Ire that this was the perfect chance to practice her combat skills, adding that with his healing, their team was solid. Still, Rimuru cautioned that they were outnumbered and advised that the best strategy was to take out the 2 fools in front first, leaving the one at the back for last. One clueless goon lunged toward Ire, grabbing her shoulder to cop a feel of her body. But before he could blink twice, Ire twisted his arm and ferociously smashed his useless head into the ground. Seeing his comrade attacked, the other goon at the front charged at Ire in rage, only for Ire to redesign his face with her knee, sending him crashing down. Next, the last thug with his thumb-shaped head swung his blade, but Ire, unrelenting, caught it with her dragon hand and shattered it into pieces. Terrified, the egghead froze, but before he could react, Ire Sparta kicked him out of existence. But just then, a hidden thug attempted a sneak attack from behind, only to be too slow as Ire seized his head with her dragon hand and crushed it to dust. With the thugs defeated, Rimuru noticed Ire's hand was injured from shattering the sword, so he healed her with his magic. While tending to her, he promised that whenever she got hurt in a fight, he'd heal her. All she had to do was tell him. Once healed, Ire felt rejuvenated, as if blessed with new limbs, and they resumed their journey until they reached Sun City, also known as Barret City. There, Rimuru confided in Ire that the city held magic so powerful, it could betray the world, and his sole mission was to obtain it. Several days later, Ire found herself in a village assisting some dudes with carrying lumber by magically sending the logs into her dimensional storage. Abruptly, a mountain near the village erupted with hot magma and began overflowing toward the settlement. However, upon witnessing this, Ire decided to play the heroine by attempting to store the molten lava in her dimensional storage. Yet, just as she raised her hands, the sheer force of the magma overwhelmed her. At that precise moment, Ire, lying in an inn, jolted awake and realized it had all been a nightmare. Also, she glanced over and saw Rimuru already up, dressed, and looking fresher than a mint leaf. Noticing she was awake, Rimuru told her to get dressed and reminded her it was checkout time. However, as Rimuru watched, he saw Ire putting on her ragged slave clothes and, realizing Ire needed a wardrobe upgrade, dragged her to the nearest clothing store like a proud sugar daddy. Upon arriving at the clothing store, the merchant encouraged Ire to go wild, pick any outfit she liked, and change into the preferred clothes in the changing room. While standing unclad in the changing room and gazing at the mirror, Ire found herself in disbelief that, for the first time, a master was willing to provide her with fresh clothes. Ire had fun trying out numerous nice chickie outfits before settling for a nice top and a short mini skirt. To complete the makeover, Rimuru suggested they add a hat and a cape, and then announced that their next stop would be the weapon store. Upon reaching the weapon store, Rimuru and the merchant hit it off like old bros at a reunion, and when Ire inquired how they knew each other, the merchant explained that Rimuru's family name, Blanche, was well known among adventurers. The merchant then asked Rimuru if he planned to become an adventurer like his parents. Rimuru confirmed he did and then introduced Ire as his combat partner. Nevertheless, the merchant, with a condescending glance, remarked that Ire didn't seem like the combat type due to her built like a shoelace stature, and even questioned whether she could handle his weapons. Surprisingly, when he handed Ire his biggest sword, she wielded it flawlessly, as if it were crafted just for her. However, when Ire asked Rimuru if wielding such a massive weapon was necessary, Rimuru reassured her that it was essential for battling huge monsters on the way. With that, the pair continued their journey toward Realm. Along the way, Ire disintegrated her mighty sword into her dimensional storage, astonishing Rimuru, who had never imagined her storage could hold something so large. On a more serious note, Rimuru informed Ire that he wanted them to detour to his home to retrieve his luggage, which was just a day's walk from their current location. Misunderstanding what he meant, Ire blushed and asked if it was not too early for Rimuru to introduce her to his parents, but Rimuru sadly replied that his parents were deceased. To clarify further, Rimuru explained that his family had died protecting their town from a group of invading trolls. Mid-conversation, Ire suddenly interrupted him, saying that she sensed a strange energy. Intrigued by her ability, Rimuru asked if the horn on her head could react to mana, but before Ire could answer, a giant griffin swooped down from above, launching an attack. Fortunately, Ire managed to shove Rimuru out of harm's way. As the massive bird prepared for a second strike, Ire swiftly summoned her enormous blade from her dimensional storage. However, they then realized the creature was using the sun to hide its position. Suddenly, as the beast dove in for the final attack, Ire swung her blade with divine timing, cleaving it in two, literally cracking the earth and shattering her weapon in the process. Unfortunately, this feat took a severe toll on Ire's body, causing her to bleed from every opening. As she collapsed unconscious, Rimuru rushed to her side and, placing his hand on her, cast a powerful healing spell to restore her. Moments later, Ire finally regained consciousness only to find Rimuru's cultured hand resting comfortably on her flat chest bubbles. But before she could react, Rimuru quickly explained that physical contact was necessary for his rookie healing magic. When Ire asked what the heck had happened, Rimuru clarified that her human side couldn't withstand the beast's violent power. Still in recovery, Ire decided to rest for a while, and as she recuperated, Rimuru remembered her horn could detect mana, decided to test if his healing mana could channel through it. To try it out, Rimuru grabbed hold of Ire's horns and began to channel his mana into it. But when he noticed Ire didn't react in any way, Rimuru decided to crank it up, and suddenly Ire started to scream happy noises. She begged him to go deeper with the mana, and Rimuru in confusion instantly pulled his hand back like he had just touched a cursed artifact. After the awkward silence faded into twilight, Rimuru helped Ire to her feet, and they resumed their journey to his home. Soon, they finally arrived at Rimuru's hometown, where an attack from trolls about a year ago had destroyed the entire town. Hours later, Ire, who had initially collapsed just as they reached the town, woke up suddenly and realized she was in Rimuru's family home. She quietly tiptoed downstairs only to find the living room filled with a bunch of baggage littered on the ground. When she asked Rimuru what they were, Rimuru informed her that they were tools and potions he wanted her to store in her dimensional storage. Intrigued, Ire demanded to know what the tools were used for, to which Rimuru explained that they were high-class products allowing anyone to cast spells by channeling mana through them. However, before he could even finish his lecture, Ire grabbed one and accidentally nuked the roof with it, which greatly angered Rimuru. Meanwhile, just as Rimuru was scolding Ire for her reckless behavior and for destroying his home, a man with a goatee walked in and, upon seeing Ire pinned down by Rimuru, immediately assumed they were having a nice time. Sternly, the man began scolding them, advising that they were too young to clap. Confused, when Ire demanded to know who the guy was, Rimuru revealed that his name was Barnes, a former adventurer and blacksmith who was also his father's best friend. Observantly, Barnes took one glance at Ire and clocked she was a slave, since the only reason Rimuru needed a slave was as a bodyguard for his journey to Realm. Rimuru confirmed she was indeed his bodyguard, and then told Barnes they would need a weapon for her since her giant sword had broken during the battle with the griffin. Carefully examining the broken sword, Barnes commented that the metal couldn't withstand the power of Ire's dragon hand, which caused it to shatter. To assist, Barnes suggested they head to his workshop, promising to do all he could to find a weapon better suited for Ayer's strong dragon hand. Yet, upon arriving at the workshop, Ayer tried wielding numerous weapons, but every weapon she touched she ended up shattering them to pieces with her overwhelming strength, shocking Barnes and Rimuru as they watched. Thoughtfully, Barnes remembered he had just the perfect weapon to handle Ayer's power. With that, he strutted deeper into his workshop and came back flexing a sword so massive it made the previous ones look like butter knives. Barnes then stabbed the giant sword into the ground, and as Ayer picked up the blade capable of dividing even the firmament of heaven, she remarked on how light it felt. Barnes clarified that the blade was equipped with a weight enhancement, and though it seemed heavy, the sword chose its owner. Encouragingly, Barnes told Ayer to give it a test swing, and when she did, the mere force cracked the walls and split the ground. However, just after the swing, Ayer felt intense pain in her hand, and upon noticing Ayer clutching her hand in agony, Barnes pointed out that her body seemed to struggle with her immense power. To help Ayer stop accidentally harming herself every time she uses her power, Barnes offered to teach her some basic techniques. Barnes assured Ayer that if she learned how to hold back her powers properly, then using her powers would hurt less. To illustrate, Barnes showed her the essentials using a practice dummy and a plain sword. As he swung at the dummy, Barnes told Ayer that with the right stance, ideal speed, and precise angle, she could wield her power effectively. But after the lesson, Ayer complained that his techniques were too plain and basic and insisted she needed something flashy. Barnes responded that if she wanted a flashy attack, she simply needed to add a little mana to the techniques he'd taught her. Rimuru also encouraged Ayer to learn the techniques, warning that it wasn't effective to continue using his healing magic on her, and then assured her that acrobatics would help her pick them up quickly. Generously, without being asked, Barnes offered to help Ayer with special training, but warned that, while it promised great power in attacks, it left the attacker vulnerable. So, Ayer got to work practicing the basics, while Barnes reassured her that mastering the techniques would prove useful on their journey to Realm. Once the training was over, Rimuru demanded to know how much the sword Barnes had given Ayer cost, but Barnes snapped, yelling that if he wanted a sword for sale he could visit eBay, but his blade wasn't for sale. Firmly, Barnes clarified that both the sword and the techniques were sacred family treasures passed down from his knightly ancestors, forged for protecting the people they loved, not for flipping a profit. Emphatically, Barnes declared he'd never sell his treasured sword to anyone, and then informed Rimuru and Ayer that he was only lending it to them. Gently, Barnes placed his hand on Ayer's head and told her to ensure she returned safe and sound with his sword in one piece, and Ayer nodded to show she understood. While alone with Rimuru, Ayer remarked that he and Barnes looked like father and son than two dudes with a blacksmithing bromance, to which Rimuru revealed that she might be right since, back then, he used to follow his father and his father's friends on their adventures. They were like one big family. Not long after leaving Barnes' workshop, they ran into a black-haired man named Kyan and another man standing right beside him. Immediately, Kyan wasted no time scolding Rimuru for always leaving town and then pointed out that he should at least say hi before departing again. However, he soon softened and told Rimuru that it was good to see he was back, because the entire townspeople had been worried sick about him. Upon learning that Rimuru would be leaving for another journey in a few days, Kyan gave him boxes of fruits and vegetables as a send-off gift. Just as they left Kyan's place, Rimuru informed Ayer that they would be staying in his hometown for a week before heading to Realm. Nevertheless, during this 1 week, they would be training under Barnes to build their stamina and also studying the basics of magic. Subsequently, Rimuru led Ayer to a room filled with dusty magic grimoires and instructed her that, since she had the mana bestowal gift, it would be best if she learned the basics of magic. With that, Rimuru left Ayer to read, explaining that he had other important tasks to attend to, and for the following days, Ayer took her time studying each of the magic books like a nerd. Whenever she needed explanations for things she didn't understand, she looked for Rimuru, but found him fraternizing with the townspeople and decided to leave quietly. The next day, Barnes continued to teach Ayer his sword techniques and was genuinely amazed that she had not only learned the basics, but also some advanced techniques in just a few days of practice. When Barnes demanded to know if Ayer was the daughter of some famous swords god or something to be so skilled, Rimuru interjected and informed him that Ayer was suffering from amnesia and did not remember a single thing from her past. Shifting topics, Barnes promised to upgrade their gear since they were leaving the next day and then casually mentioned that the whole town was throwing a farewell rave in the square for Rimuru. Later that night, at the town square, Rimuru found Kyan and the others preparing for his send-off party. Noticing his surprised look, Kyan reminded him that his parents had done everything they could to protect the town, and it was only fair on their part to give their son at least a proper send-off. Meanwhile, Ayer sadly noticed that Rimuru had little time for her and was more absorbed in his townspeople. Later at home, while Rimuru prepared for the party, he instructed Ayer to store all the gifts they had received inside her dimensional storage. When Ayer asked if she should store the gifts in the basement as well, Rimuru replied with a no, explaining that the stuff in the basement was just dangerous drugs that were of no use. Suddenly, a pack of hyperactive town kids rushed into the house, asking Rimuru to hurry up as the send-off party was about to start. Rimuru asked his town friends to chill for a minute and, turning to Ayer, asked if she was ready, urging that they go to the party together. In response, Ayer coldly asked if it was an order from a master to a slave, and when Rimuru replied saying no, Ayer declined and said she wasn't going. As Rimuru and his friends left the house for the party, Ire, pacing around the house, thought about how close Rimuru was to the people of his town, which made her start to miss her own hometown. Moments later, as she wondered where she would end up when Rimuru was finally done with his task, she spotted a cute cat and chased after it. Just when she thought she had caught the cat, it slipped from her hand and headed down to the basement. Ire followed the cat toward the basement, but suddenly, she tripped and crashed headfirst down the stairs. Inside the basement, Ire began to relive her horrible past as a slave, recalling how she, alongside other girls, had been molested in a basement by their owner, and how they would scream for help but to no avail. Fortunately, Rimuru arrived just in time, but before he could rescue her from her horrible nightmare past, the slave collar on her neck activated, sending a massive surge of electricity down Ire's body. She collapsed on the spot, but Rimuru caught her just in time, and knowing that the slave collar on Ire's neck would only inflict terrifying pain on a slave when she defied her master, he grew even more curious. While in Rimuru's arms, Ire finally regained consciousness and muttered that she, too, would love to belong somewhere and have people who loved her. Furthermore, Ire mentioned that she had a home, a father, and neighbors, but the only thing she could vaguely remember was the education she received as a slave. However, before she could say more, Rimuru hushed her by reminding her that he was there for her. Ire interrupted, countering that she was just his slave and that someday he would no longer have a use for her. In response, Rimuru pointed out that she was right. One day she would no longer be his slave, but before then, he would have built her a house to live in, and if she still insisted on going home to her people, he would help her out. Stretching his hand to help her up, Rimuru promised that until then, he would never leave or abandon her, and then urged Ire to trust him and stay by his side. Just as Rimuru helped her up, Ire asked why he wasn't at the party, and Rimuru casually said he came back with food, because he knew her appetite was more dangerous than any monster. Additionally, Rimuru asked Ire to accompany him to the party if the food wasn't enough for her, and she excitedly agreed. The following morning, before they commenced their journey, Barnes provided body armor for them, one armor plate for Rimuru and a chest piece for Ire. Following that, Rimuru and Ire got dressed, bid farewell to Barnes, and set off on their journey to Raum. While on their way to Raum, Rimuru suggested they take a detour to a spot with a breathtaking view, to which Ire agreed, though she pointed out that they needed to have lunch there since she was dying of hunger. As they made their way to the spot, they unexpectedly bumped into a merchant accompanied by some adventurers hired to protect him. Rimuru instantly clocked the merchant as the same dude who'd been handing out food at his send-off party the previous night. Meanwhile, the sweet-looking female adventurers guarding the merchant recalled seeing Rimuru at the party and warmly invited him to join them for lunch. Rimuru was about to politely decline like a gentleman, but the moment he heard the chicks were adventurers, he agreed to join them since he planned on becoming an adventurer himself. As the group settled in for lunch, the girls clocked that Ire was a slave, but instead of pity, they started throwing side eyes full of envy because Rimuru was treating Ire better than you treat your actual girlfriend. Just then, one weak adventurer among them struggled to open the lid of a jam jar, only to be cautioned by the female adventurer that it was a magical tool requiring mana to unlock. Since the man couldn't manage it, Ire innocently offered to assist, but when she channeled her mana into the jar, it shattered in her hand, splattering its contents all over her. The female adventurers immediately scolded Ire for using too much mana, yet in her defense, Ire retorted that she could have opened it properly if the container hadn't been so flimsy instead of sturdy. Shortly thereafter, Rimuru accompanied Ire to the river to wash off the sticky mess clinging to her body caused by the broken jam. But while they were cleaning up, a deafening explosion occurred from the direction of the merchant, jolting them to attention. Meanwhile, chaos erupted as some lowlife thugs had ambushed the merchant group, overpowering most of the adventurers. Even the female adventurers weren't spared, for a brutish, bald-headed thug gripped Amy, one of the adventurers, by the neck, threatening to go nasty with her before discarding her lifeless body like weak old leftovers. The poor girl trembled in terror as the brute vowed to pass her around like a blunt once he was done with her. However, before he could act on his vile threat, Ire intervened, spilling his guts with a fierce strike and declaring that if there was one thing she hated above all, it was scum who preyed on women. With one of their members taken out, the rest of the thugs immediately wasted no time charging at Ire. However, Ire moved like an assassin trained by shadows, swiftly taking them out one after the other. Realizing they were outmatched, a thug cleverly used a magic box to summon an impenetrable shield and smiled, confidently knowing that no ordinary adventurer could break it. Yet, to his utter shock, Ire activated her mana bestowal and effortlessly shattered his so-called impenetrable shield into nothing. As she took down most of the thugs, the last one desperately started begging for his life to be spared, claiming they weren't robbers but travelers attacked up the mountain by a beast. Nevertheless, Ire savagely stabbed his chest with her sharp dragon claws, ending his life in an instant. As the dust finally settled, Rimuru quickly rushed over to Amy, offering to heal her wounds. Gently placing his hand on her massive milkers, Rimuru healed her completely, and, feeling brand new, Amy gratefully thanked him for saving her life. When Amy casually commented on how strong Ire was, Rimuru explained that he had hired Ire as his bodyguard on his way to Raum, fully aware that traveling the dangerous roads alone was a death wish. After hearing this, Amy wisely advised him to ensure he took good care of Ire. Following this, Rimuru noticed that Aya was wearing a gloomy expression and firmly demanded to know what troubled her. Hesitantly, Aya opened up, confessing she felt sad, believing she